As you can see from the B-roll in the video, finally got my LQ9 back from the machine shop. It's been almost a year since I've even seen this thing, and I'm finally glad to have this back in my hands. The majority of the time was getting the bottom end straight again. For whatever reason, when I picked this thing up, the whole bottom end was out of whack. The crank and everything, rod bearings were all toast, so I had to get the bottom end line honed. And then the cylinder walls were not in the greatest shape, so we actually bored those out to 40 over, put some new pistons in there. So I just want to give you a quick rundown of the build spec of this and kind of the finalized form before I start slapping this thing together and putting it into the car. Should be a fairly quick video, but I wanted to give you all the build specs just in case you want to do something similar or we're rebuilding yourself. I was going for high horsepower, naturally aspirated, trying to get in the 500 horsepower range with between the cam setup and everything else. Should be somewhere around there. First thing is we have the full catalog of ARP hardware on this thing. The main bolts, the rod cap bolts, head studs, those are all ARPs. We went with scat rods. They are a little bit stronger than factory and I think a little bit lighter. They should handle a little bit of boost, probably like 600 to 800 horsepower worth if I decide to add a supercharger to this. Balance rotating assembly. We put Clevite bearings in this thing, so the cam bearings are new, rod bearings, mains are all Clevite. They're run them in NASCARs, pretty proven. Again, we went with 40 over bore, so 4-inch bore, 40 over, and we went with, I believe they are CP pistons. They're flat top with a fly cut in there. I probably could have gone a little more aggressive with a camshaft as far as the lift with the fly cut on there, but I think start off with this and see how we do. I'm going with a Texas Speed 228R cam. It's a 600 lift cam. I probably could have gone with a 625 lift with these fly cuts and even more aggressive than that. But it's pretty abrasive on the valve train, and I'm planning on revving this thing to like 7,500 RPM. So I want this thing to last. Obviously we got double valve springs, retainers, forward retainers, you know, whole 9 yards. As far as the top end goes, those are all parts that are coming soon. Got all new, brand new GM seals, top to bottom. One thing is, as you LS guys know, there's a little barbell looking thing that goes in the back of the motor, and that's an oil restrictor. And I got a billet one of those. And due to the bore size, it was kind of in between a 6.0 and 6.2, so I ended up going with an LS2 stock head gasket to fit the bore. I just need to measure again to really confirm that that's the correct size head gasket, but I could always exchange that. But yeah, again, this is a 6.0 liter bored out to 40 over. So 4-inch, 0.040 inch, and I do have the heads that are going on this from the old LS6 that blew up. I believe they're 243 heads, so they're going to be the same as what comes off an LS2. They flow pretty well. Did a little bit of porting on them, nothing crazy, but should see a little bit of gains out of that. In between the cam, I didn't go too aggressive with the cam because I didn't want the entire rev range to be moved to the top end and all of my power moved to the top end towards redline. I had a C6 Corvette that had, I think it was like a BTR stage 4 cam or something, and it's something crazy, and it did not make power until like 5,000 RPM. I really didn't want that for road racing and circuit racing. Because when you're trying to dig out of a corner, low RPM, you need that bottom end torque. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Price wise, it was fairly expensive, as you can imagine. The machine work alone was like $1,300, and I think it was another little over $1,000 for the pistons, forge rods, bearings, and then gaskets I had to get, cam kit. It's a lot. But this thing should be very, very reliable. After seeing LS1 aluminum blocks crack, I think I looked at like 3 or 4 different aluminum blocks before I got this LQ9, and the blocks were either cracked in half, sleeves were cracked. Didn't want to deal with that ever again. I think that the LS1, sorry LS1 guys, but they're kind of weak motors, to be honest. Everyone gives them like hype for being reliable, but like I said, mine had 30,000 miles on it, cracked a cylinder wall. Don't know how that happened. I'm guessing that I had a head gasket leak, and it probably leaked into the chamber, some coolant, and hydrolocked the motor and maybe cracked the sleeve. But again, I didn't want to risk that. This block should handle over 1,000 horsepower in and of itself. Not really too sure about the rods, are probably the weakest link in this setup, but I wanted a really lightweight rotating assembly so I can rev it higher. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys have any questions. But pretty straightforward build. Should have parts trickling in soon, so you should see additional videos of the actual block going together. In order to put the motor back into the Corvette, I know my other video got pretty good feedback of how to remove the motor, so putting it back in, I'm actually going to leave the heads off to be able to fit this thing in a lot easier. Just make sure they're nice and protected, the head gasket sealing area. But yeah, it should be a lot easier with the heads off to put back in the Corvette. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty close to this thing. Again, I had the transmission rebuilt on the Vet. I have a new steering rack for that thing. So it should literally be like a brand new car, and the fact that it's 30,000 miles on it, I got the coilovers already. Should be a pretty awesome car, MGW shifter. But yeah, so in the next couple days, be on the lookout for another video of assembling the rest of this back together. Gonna do oil pan, front and rear covers probably, put all the sensors back in it. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. LSs are pretty easy to build, although I did have the bottom end assembled because I wanted to make absolutely sure that my rod bearing clearances were correct, and I didn't have the measuring tools to be able to accurately do that myself. He gapped the rings for me, so everything's pretty much set up on the bottom end. I'm going to be swapping out valve springs and doing some head work myself, but that's pretty straightforward. Pretty excited to have this thing back on the road. And I know it's going to be probably like 1,000 miles plus to break in the trans and engine, but after that we should be able to send it. And you guys remember how fast that thing was in the canyon, so I'm really excited to get it back out there. I think the old motor was actually down on power quite a bit because the head gasket was just leaking for such a long time, and I was probably down on compression. Even though that motor felt pretty strong, this should be on a whole nother level. Like I said, this thing should probably make like close to 500 horsepower. At the wheels, not too sure, but definitely want to get it on a dyno. I'm gonna have a tuning video for this of using the Gen 3 PCM and how to tune for the bigger displacement and running a cam. So I'm going to be going through a full tutorial for that, so stay tuned. But yeah, lots of Corvette videos. I know I was doing a lot of BMW stuff on the channel. That will probably trickle in too here and there, but yeah, full steam ahead on the Corvette, and we'll try to get this thing done. Thanks for watching.